welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, one and all, to a brand new edition of... I didn't feel like holding it out that long. The Quinn Spinn. I'm your host, Quinn. At least that's how I'm known here on the program. And I'm back here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, and more for another rousing and riveting installment of the official podcast of Underground Music Collective. And you just heard REVEL 9's All I Become. That's been our opening theme song since the great year of 2014, and it will be until the very end of days. And before we get to today's guest, who's joining us again, just want to encourage you to subscribe, like, comment, follow, share, whatever the mechanism is on your platform of choice. All that engagement helps. If you like the show, share it with your friends. If you don't, share it with your enemies, because they'll like the things that you don't. And it all helps us. Any publicity is good publicity. Anyway, I am here with... making her third Quinn Spinn appearance, technically fourth if we're counting the lost episode, but third official, Lauren Gomance of Soulfit Counseling.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back.
And Soulfit Yoga.
Soulfit Yoga.
Just Miss Soulfit over here.
Soulfit, yeah, love it.
Just in general. And fun fact, by making your third appearance here on the show, you are now in a tie with a bunch of other people for second place all time for most appearances.
I love this. So I need to come back again soon so I can be like the top guest.
Yeah. Erin McClendon has the record with 4. You're at 3. Foundation Mech is at 3. Lord Goldie's at 3. Mike Roy of Roy and the Secret People's at 3. I feel like there's another one at 3 that I should probably be remembering. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting you. But there's a bunch of people with 3.
Yeah. So Goldie's the best. Foundation Mecca's the best. All good people.
Yeah.
I am just so impressed that you do that live every time.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I can't think about it too much because if I start thinking, like, I just have to do it.
Yeah.
Because like if I'm thinking about it, like I'm just gonna mess it up. Like when I do the solo missions in here, when I record them, it takes me like 12 takes just to get the intro right.
Yeah.
Because it's just me staring at like a giant box light in my phone. And it's like such a, like here it feels like we're live, even though we're not. Like, you know.
But we are recording.
Yeah, it's live to tape, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm treating it as though we're live on television right now. But when I'm in there, like something in my mind just knows that I'm pre-recording and I can screw up a dozen times.
Oh.
So yeah, but I just have to go.
Yeah.
And like I just have to just runaway train, stare straight ahead.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't blink during the intro either, which is I've watched back and it kind of freaks me out. It is. I'm like, but you know, it's just because if I break any kind of the routine, then it's just going to completely just jack things up.
Yeah, that's badass. For my podcast, the intro is just done. So every time it's the same.
Can I tell you, people criticize the intro on YouTube though.
Really?
People are like, it's too long. You need to put that stuff at the end. I'm like, okay, I don't come into your house and tell you how to podcast.
No, and it's honestly just a small little blip and it's fun. I think it's cool that you do it on your own.
Yeah, right? Like it's part of the character of the show. If you've been here for 10 years, you know that.
Yeah, anyway. And you love rituals, you love routine, and I like that. I think that's important.
Yeah. I wouldn't know how to start a show without doing all that.
No,
so
it's fun.
Moral of the story is y'all are stuck with it.
Yeah.
So, you know.
You do what you want to do, because it's your life.
It's my show.
It's your podcast.
You start a podcast, and you intro it however you want.
Amen.
Anyway. Full disclosure, I just taped a pilot of Thirst and Foremost with Ender Bowen, and the objective is to drink a flight of beer while you talk about life. So if I'm a little, extra lively, that's why, because we're recording this literally right after that. But anyway.
That's so funny. I did not do that.
Yeah. No. You're here just, observing the car crash. Yeah. But anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about you. And let's reintroduce you, re-endear you to our audience by asking you the 3 standard questions. Those 3 questions are, of course, who are you? What are your passions? And why on earth would you want to come back here on the Quinn Spinn for the 3rd time?
I love this. So I'm Lauren Gomance, licensed counselor, yoga teacher, healer, and I love doing all of my own healing, all of that good stuff. Why would I want to come back? I just think you're awesome. And yeah, I'm really in competition to be the top one, the top dog here.
Yeah.
So I really need a 4th try at this. And I feel like we have a good thing with our year end, like wrap up. And then also we don't really get to talk that much outside of yoga. So it's kind of cool for us to catch up here.
We have both had a very
busy,
loopy, crazy kind of year individually.
It's been a wild year.
Yeah. There's been a lot going on. And of course we're going to talk about that. And the whole reason I wanted to do this episode was because I remembered we did the year in review, talking about our years and what we've learned last year to start December. So let's start December again by doing the same thing.
Yeah, with what we've learned.
Yeah, with what we've learned
I
about
love
life,
that.
about business, and how that
Yes.
informs the journey going forward.
I love that. So I've definitely been on a different route with business stuff. But one thing that I just did, and I told you a little bit
Mm.
about it, is a therapy retreat.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like a real world for therapists.
Right.
It's like 6 therapists picked to live in a cabin in the freaking woods.
do you know each other or
No, didn't know each other from all over the world. Like some people are from out of America, and it's just really badass. It's an immersive experience. They take your phone the day you get there.
Mhm.
You're in nature and you're with very well-trained therapists. And really the goal is for you to come back to your most authentic, most healthy self, because we have so much distraction going on in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we also get some training in that, which is awesome.
Mhm.
So loved it. It was really, really beautiful. We did a lot of internal family systems work. We did a lot of our own therapy, which
Yeah.
is badass.
Mhm.
And then we just got so close. I can't even imagine. It's freaky because obviously I have best friends that I love so much, but when you're in a house with 6 people for 8 days and you're talking about deep trauma work, like, and you have no outside distractions, you get to know them so well. And like the good, the bad, not that it's bad, but like the good, the dark, the sad, the angry. It's just lovely to see how much people can really love you and how much you really love them when you're just fully raw and authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. And taking away the distractions of technology,
Oh
the
my
outside
gosh.
world. Like,
Yeah.
we don't get to do that much in this society.
No. I had some panic on the second or third day, and so did one of my friends. She was awesome. We were both on a run after our therapy day, and it's a lot of energy work. It's not just sitting there and learning.
hmm
But we were both like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. And I feel like I'm a pretty strong person. I
Mhm.
feel like I can handle a lot, but it was difficult.
Yeah. Well, you have to stretch yourself too.
Yeah.
You have to test your limits or you're never going to grow.
Yes. And so that's a goal that I have. I want to host therapy retreats
Yeah.
and mix yoga with that. And I just feel like it's important to have something like that for people, an option outside of just one therapy session a week, which is great, but something immersive,
Yeah.
like a deep dive.
hmm So as a therapist,
Mhm.
you know, for you, why was it
Uh-huh.
important for you to go and seek out this opportunity
Mhm.
to work through your own stuff?
I've done it before. I've done a different kind of program with Pia Melody, and I loved that. But we were able to go to a hotel at night, and we had our cell phones, and we could go to restaurants or do whatever we want. And so I've never had a fully immersive experience of deep dive into your soul,
Mhm.
yourself, and then this love for others as well. And
Mhm.
so for me, I do want to be the absolute best therapist I can be and best soul I can be, best
Yeah.
person, most authentic, real. That's really been coming up for me, is being more real.
Mhm.
And I think it's so easy for me as a therapist and maybe all of us to kind of not be as real at times, like put on a mask of like, oh, I'm happy all the time, or not showing all the feelings.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
So as a person,
Mhm.
what did you learn about yourself that you'll
Oof.
carry forward from this?
I love this. Good question. I love that. I love the work that we did, and I will carry that forward as a therapist, the IFS, internal family systems,
Yeah.
etc. But so we have protector parts that are either firefighters or managers.
Mhm.
And then we have these exile parts of ourselves that we want to hide, these hurt or wounded parts.
Yeah.
And so for me, some themes that came up is I'm very much an overfunctioner. You might can relate, like overworking,
Yeah.
kind of some work addiction issues,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes put on a mask of happy or a mask of people pleasing rather than just like saying whatever I'm feeling in that moment.
Right.
So these are things that I want to work on. There was just so much more, and there's a deep family trauma work too.
Yeah.
That people do, and just releasing things that aren't yours to carry.
Right. Right. And we all have those things.
Oh my gosh.
We all have those burdens and those stories that are put there by someone else and we
Yeah.
internalize. And no matter who put them there, you know, it's
Yeah.
up to us to work through them.
Yeah. And often not intentional. I know more than not, parents like want to do a good job.
Mhm.
They try their best, but they had a hard time growing up or whatever it is. And we may learn these narratives of you always need to look happy, or you need to work your ass off all the time. You
Mhm.
can't ever rest,
Right.
or just different things. And so it's trying to figure that out and then come back to the most raw, authentic version of yourself that's also just connected to others in a healthy way.
Figuring out what your barriers are
Yes.
is
Yes.
very important, because that's how you're going to understand
Mhm.
how to work through them.
Mhm.
There's really no going around them. There's no avoiding them. Like, if you try to avoid them, try to stuff them down, they're going to manifest themselves in other ways, right?
Mhm.
And it's going to
Mhm.
come out like, that's why, you know, it's interesting, because I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday about how, like, about the concept of a midlife crisis,
Yes.
right?
Oh yeah.
And, you know, this person who I'm not going to name out of respect was like, you know, so do you believe in this whole idea of a midlife crisis?
Mhm.
Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, is it a real thing? Is it just something we, you know, blame stupid things that we do on in midlife?
Mhm.
I'm like, it's neither of those things. What it is it's our actual self coming out to greet us
Yep.
underneath all the layers of conditioning, and us trying to figure out
Yes.
what to actually do with that self.
Yeah.
You know, so like, you know, because society will just give us these layers of conditioning of you can't, you won't, you shouldn't, you need to do this, you need to check
Mhm.
these boxes, you should do this by this time, this by this time.
Mhm.
And this individual, who I know very, very well,
Yeah.
is, you know, currently in the process of, I think, awakening some things,
Yeah.
you know, and moving in the direction of those things,
Yeah.
and feeling as though that's selfish,
Mhm.
you know. And I framed it this way. I'm like, well, what's more selfish? You
Mhm.
pursuing this direction and living, you know, as you have always truly been,
Mhm.
or is it more selfish to not do that and be this reduced version of yourself that then everyone else, for lack of a better term, has to deal with?
That, and they're not modeling being authentic
Right.
and what's true to them.
Mm-hmm.
So 100%, I completely agree with that. Do you relate to any of the whole, not midlife crisis, but like quarter life crisis ish?
Mhm. Yeah, I've been in it since I was 26 and started the show.
Yeah.
because
yeah.
here's those first few years after college,
Mhm.
like, for me, it was okay. I guess I'm just checking the boxes now. You know, I'm just going to be normal, and I'm going to be in this relationship, and I better go get a good job, and I better go please all the
Mhm.
elders and this, that, and the
Mhm.
other thing.
Mhm.
And then that night that I decided, like, I want to do a podcast based
Mhm.
off this college radio show, and I don't know what it's going to be. I just want to do something that has an impact. That was the
Mhm.
spark. And it's led all the way here 10 plus years later,
Mhm.
you know, but that was that awakening of like that version of me that wanted to have an impact and a purpose and serve.
Yes.
Right. And like, there have been over the past decade plus a lot of layers to shed, a lot of growth that's had to happen
Mhm.
in that process. You know, I mean, first of all, I was eventually figuring out that relationship that I was in was the wrong relationship.
Yeah.
You know, which I don't know ever would have happened if it weren't for this crazy thing that I do.
No doubt.
You know, because like it got me moving toward purpose, and like I had something outside of that to fight for. I had it wasn't just about getting up, going to work so I could, you know, check all the boxes for somebody
Mhm.
else. It's like I have something that I want to build
Mhm.
that I'm finding like has been within me this entire time.
Yeah.
And, you know, from there, you know, navigating the personal changes, navigating professional changes, like it teaches you over the course of time, once you go on that star seed journey, like everything you need to know about yourself.
Yes.
Right. And especially taking the leap and, you know, leaving the confines of a day job. Like that's over the past 3 years for me, like I've had to learn everything I needed to know about myself, not only as somebody trying to build a business and a platform, but as a human being, and how my barriers get in the way of me serving that.
Yes, I completely agree. What is there any specific barriers? This is not a therapy session, but like that you feel like you have that do get in the way of that?
Well, right now, there's I think like the fear of being the salesperson.
Oh, yes.
That's the one I'm battling with now, because I realize that holds a lot of keys to growth.
Mhm.
You know, for the long, and especially in the music industry, it's like you don't want to be the salesperson.
Mm-mm.
The salesperson's icky. Like, you get the
Mhm.
like nobody wants to deal with the salesperson. At least that's what we think in our minds in the music industry,
Yeah.
because it's supposed to be about the art, man. But like, what are you trying to do? You're trying to serve through what you're
Yeah.
selling. You're trying to serve through what you're providing. It's not about selling to make money. It's about, okay, there are these issues, there are these problems that we face in the industry. I have a solution to fix those.
Mhm.
And there's value in that solution,
Absolutely.
which can help them create value in their platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's your time and energy, and your time and energy, you do have to be paid for that,
Mhm.
because it is important. And if not, your business cannot continue to grow. The same as musicians need to be paid for
Mhm.
everything that they do.
Yeah.
I understand it's probably not to the level that it should be in regard to you or maybe musicians, etc.,
Mhm.
depending on who it is.
Yeah. But we've got to create an ecosystem that supports that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think if we're all helping each other, and I don't feel that you're salesy at all. I think it's just you doing your work, and people gravitate toward that will, and it's beneficial.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is people are either going to pick up what you're putting down or they're not.
Yeah, and that's okay.
And that's something definitely over the past, couple of years in particular, as I've had to really come to terms with, is like, some people are going to understand,
Mhm.
what in any area of life,
Mhm.
what you're about, or sometimes they'll be so committed to misunderstanding you that you can't help that. And that's fine.
And that's not your journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep saying I want to write a book that's like, it's not my journey. Really just always coming back to yourself.
Mhm.
And I truly believe that we have the answers within ourselves. That society tells us all of these things that we're supposed to be doing. And especially at our age, we should have done this by
Mhm.
now, or we should have done that by now, air quotes.
Mhm.
And it's just not that. It's what's right for you. As long as you're not hurting people, etc., and you do feel like you're in a place of your purpose,
Mhm.
then yeah, keep on rocking with whatever you feel is right for you.
Yeah, because like there are those boxes that
Mhm.
we're expected to check, right?
Mhm.
I think that's like becoming less and less the case, that's the expectation. Like,
Yes,
I even see that
I
within my own
agree.
family, where I'm not getting, questions on, so when you having some grandkids,
Oh my gosh, yes.
like I'm not getting those questions anymore, because I think in part because I'm more dialed into my purpose, but I think also because like everybody in that dynamic has a better understanding of what life actually is than
Yeah.
maybe we did 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
Including those older than me. But like, and that's the thing, is like, you don't want to just do it just to do it and end up with the wrong person,
Nope.
And I know, like, I've been
You've
in
been
that
there.
situation where it's like, it clearly wasn't working, but you're hanging on to it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, one revelation that I had this year, or actually last year, I really sat with myself on the whole kids thing, because technically if I wanted, I could have a kid on my own, I'm sure, somehow, or adopt,
Mhm.
etc. But at least at this point in my life, it's not something that feels like the right thing to me, and that's okay. I think it's so easy to get confused about the messages that you had growing up, and oh, this is the next step, and then you do that. But that's really, yeah, it's okay to not have the same path as other people. And I love that. That's just you being authentic to you,
Yeah.
real to you.
Absolutely. So if I can ask you a
Yeah.
question you asked me,
Yes.
what's a barrier that you're working through?
So codependency has always been a struggle for me. And I think you know a little bit about what codependency is. And
Mhm.
it's defined so many different ways, but definitely one way that it shows up for me is in caretaking.
Mhm.
And of course it's difficult being a therapist, because part of that is my job with boundaries.
Mhm.
And then with family, etc. And then also yeah, just the whole over functioning thing is a barrier. What else is a barrier?
I guess a better question is, how are you actively working through them?
I love that. I think just I'll sometimes when I feel activated, so it's almost like you'll notice with IFS, the self, when you're in the energy of the self or the soul, you're in a very calm energy. You're able to feel connected to
Mhm.
others. You feel curious. You feel there's a bunch of C words that
Yeah.
go with that. And if you're not in that, then you're in one of your parts. So
Mhm.
there could be a part of you that feels scared, or a part of you
Yeah.
that feels like anxious, or etc. So if you're activated, is what I would say, then getting curious about that and noticing it, and then taking a little bit of time, and then don't act on that activation. what is it? Like respond, don't react. So
Mhm.
give yourself a little bit of time before you just automatically jump to a reaction.
Right.
And you actually have had a couple of things this year that you did really well with that, I feel like.
Yep. Yep. Mhm.
So proud of you for
Yeah,
that.
well, thank you. Thank you. It
Yeah.
wasn't easy. Like, and sometimes you do have to give yourself the exposure to it to
Yeah.
realize that whatever's activating you is not the 30-foot demon with horns that you've made it out to be in your mind. And that's something, again, we know what I'm talking about between us. But it's like you have to give yourself that like a sense of exposure therapy to it, and realize like there's nothing here to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And like if you let the fear of an encounter of something that's going to activate you limit you, then you're not showing up as your full self.
Yes, 100%. And another phrase that I love is if it's hysterical, it's historical. And that doesn't mean that you have to be crazy laughing or crazy crying. But if it feels pretty extreme and you don't feel calm, then it has to do with something from the past. So even if it's someone that one of my clients or whoever is dating and something happens where they feel activated, they don't feel like they're in that calm self space, then it probably has to do with the history.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can think of that particular situation where it's like I was pretty committed to running from it for a while. Like, nope, not going to be in that situation, not going to be in that dynamic, not going to do it under no circumstances.
Yeah.
If the opportunity presents itself, I am leaving,
Yes.
And then I just had to come around after being in that mode for most of a day, knowing that there was the possibility of being like, you know what, I need to just stop running from it.
Yeah.
And I need to just go and show up and be me, regardless of who's in the room or what's going on in the room. Like, I have to show up for me.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's so badass. So, of course, part of being in that healthy adult energy is being able to show up regardless. We don't want to necessarily walk into a lion's den, but
right.
If we know that we can kind of take care of ourselves if there is a lion somewhere or even like a mental lion, something that's causing us to feel scared, confused, anxious, etc., then as long as we can get ourselves in a good space, then we can go into that. Yeah, so I think it's just you taking care of you, focusing on what feels right. And we all have things come up like fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of fucking up, fear of, can I cuss?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're on the internet. Who cares?
Cool. Like fear of, that's a big one for me, fear of messing up. So that's something that I'm trying to, that's a part of me. I don't know what age, it could be like 8, I'm not sure. It could be a variety of ages. There's a part of me that's scared to mess up, but it's human to mess up. Like, we're all human here and we're all gonna mess up. It's just part of the journey.
Yeah. And you have to give yourself that grace to do that. And like, I think as we age and we grow through life, if we're doing it the right way, for lack of a better term, like there is that sense of being able to come back and pull back from the perfectionism and be able to give ourselves that grace and realize that we don't have all the answers.
No.
And part of life's journey is to find them or have them shown to you, right?
Yeah.
And to not expect yourself to show up to every situation perfect.
Yeah.
But I think like when you're walking into like a potential lion's den powdered keg situation, it's important to realize that whatever answers you do have, you need to lean on those and like lean on yourself, lean on just the truth of knowing who you are, and the truth of knowing how you want to show up, and then you're not you're not responsible for anyone else's mess or how that mess might get projected or anything. If you're responding from a place of your own truth, of your own story, and serving that well, and not doing anything to, antagonize or hurt anybody else.
Absolutely.
That's all you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you just said. And kind of what you're saying is like having this internal boundary, and you can kind of see it like a little bubble around you of anything technically that's outside of me is not mine. That doesn't mean that I don't love people outside of me or I don't care about them or I don't want them to be okay, etc. But it's like if it's outside of me, it's most likely not mine. I can have communication with people, but what I first have to take care of is me. That's priority, and not in a selfish, narcissistic way, just in a healthy way.
Right. In a way that establishes a healthy boundary and allows you to show up to the situation as the best version of you.
Yes, I love that. But yeah, overall, it's been a crazy ass year. Like, One of my grandmas passed away. I think I had told you about
Right.
that. And my other grandma had fallen, and I found her, and that was really tough. So I feel like I was really rocking on my podcast and things like that. And I've definitely done fine this year, but I do feel like in some ways it's been a year of survival.
Right. Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm doggy paddling and just trying to stay above water.
Mhm.
But I do feel a lot of reprieve. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Like relief now. And I do feel that most everyone in my life is in a pretty good place.
Mhm.
So that's positive. But again, that's not, I love these people, but it's not mine to caretake.
Right.
And that's a constant reminder for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something, we just have to keep in mind. And I think we lean, sometimes on our people pleasing behaviors.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Or revert to them even. We can think we're over them and we're not, completely.
Yeah.
On our first episode, the first one that actually made it to the airwaves, we had mentioned, being in your like solid functional adult 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Again, which plays on that idea of, you're not going to be perfect. 20% of the time you're going to revert to something, to some wound or whatever, know? So it's giving yourself the grace and finding ways forward no matter what. For me, finding ways forward has been the theme of the year,
Yes. Yeah. Tell me more about that. I know a little bit about some of the business stuff. That's really exciting, but tell me more about the year overall for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's pretty much been all business, you know, and like really figuring out like, what is Underground Music Collective? What is the Quinn Spinn here in year 10? Who do we serve and how can I best show up for that? And I think like, again, there was a lot of like scarcity, mindset that I continue to have to get over, as far as like, what's possible for the platform and what's possible for me to generate in order to serve that platform.
Right.
And, also like the stories that I have about, generating a lot of revenue in an industry that, a lot of people have in their minds that, if you're successful, you're a sellout, right? And especially running a platform called Underground Music Collective, like, what does that all mean, right? And I think, like, I've come back to the idea, of course, that, like, it's fine to be profitable. It's fine to be successful. Like, all of those are good things and actually allow you to show up and serve and impact more.
Yeah.
Right? But it's the intention behind it that matters. And, I think, earlier in the year, when it was really about, my focus was just on growth and going all in and this, that, and the other thing, it was like, okay, what can we do to move the needle forward and make a splash? And that would lead maybe to some opportunities that weren't necessarily in line with our overall mission, which is to help independent creatives tell their stories.
Yes.
And then, over the summer, I had tinkered with a pivot, and we actually launched that pivot in September to ECM Collective. And then I realized over the course of the fall that like we abandoned our niche in doing so. Like, it's important to teach musicians everything they need to know about being entrepreneurs so they can go and build their platforms authentically themselves. But then we need to take the lead on that. Yeah. And we need to take the lead on it insofar as, lighting that way, providing that platform for them to do it. And the pivot was a total left turn. It was too broad.
Yes.
It was, I think there are definitely elements of it, certainly elements of it that are now rolled back into UMC that are very beneficial, like the membership community, like the emphasis on education and like, connecting that road via a bridge from artistry to entrepreneurship, right? But to take a complete left turn and be like, well, we cover all of this now, that was the wrong move. It was kind of like the Snoop Lion era of our, where it's like, it's a cool left turn and it sounds interesting, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And the audience is wondering what's going on.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is that you've really learned a lot from that too, though. So maybe it wasn't necessarily the wrong move for a time period, like you learned from it.
It felt like the absolute right move.
Yeah, at the time.
Around August, September, like, this is the way. This is the way forward. This is what it was always supposed to be. But then I realized, and what really tipped me off was when I was in Denver a few weeks ago for a business conference and I was explaining, to people what I do. They really wanted me to narrow it down and focus on the music aspect of it. And because that's the industry I came from.
Is that what you want to do?
Well, yeah. And I discovered through that, like, that's my niche.
That's what you want to do.
That's my lane. That's where I belong. And it's like connecting that world to the world of entrepreneurship. So the artist can succeed with or without the traditional industry.
Yes.
Right. But at the end of the day, like I need to then be there for them. You know, the platform needs to then be there for them. And we need, like, I need to be the lead off batter in that sense of like, okay, how do I connect this music thing to the greater world of entrepreneurship so that it may be successful? And that's something that I think, like, you know, with the pivot, it was too broad. It didn't have an identity. You know, and so Underground Music Collective has that identity through the major media, through the partnerships we've had, like established, reputable, trusted source. And then all of a sudden we take this left turn and it's like New Coke or Crystal Pepsi. And everyone's like, why did you change it? You know, like when New Kids on the Block decided they were going to
sense in certain ways. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's so badass. And another thing about you, and we've looked up your human design chart, is that you're a manifesting generator. So that means that you'll take on a task over here, a task over there, a task over here. And it doesn't always seem to make sense. But in the end, it always adds up to work together. But you do kind of take a lot of roads before you get to the place where you are solid. And that's not a bad thing. I'm a manifesting generator too. So that's why we will kind of be like, oh, maybe this is a thing that I like, or maybe that's a thing that I like. And that's okay. We're adding to our goal, what we're getting to.
Yeah. And I think it's like taking the best parts of everything we've tried to launch this year and now rolling them into this new UMC, you know, where we have the Underdogs membership community, you know, where we have.
Oh, I haven't heard of that yet.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've just launched, you know, I mean, as of recording, actually, it's not even officially launched. But, you know, as of air date, which is December 7th, it'll be out there. You know, we have, you know, the UMC Academy, you know, the coaching, the branding part of the coaching program. And then from artist to entrepreneur, where how do we connect that brand now and actually install the strategies for you to grow and scale your business as a creative, right?
Yeah.
If those things, the blog is back. We've been reviewing music now again for a month. And like we're building community. And like for me, I'm being a lot more intentional about that. My outreach game has massively improved because like, you know, I think like a lot of what felt like it was missing, you know, especially as I was just chasing dollars and trying to keep the ship afloat earlier this year, was what felt was missing was the community aspect. But then I needed to realize like, well, I need to be the tone setter. And if I'm doing this, and this, I'm not leaving time to do that.
Absolutely.
So like I've been in a lot of your DMs lately and we've been having conversations, and it's because to build a community, we need to actually be interacting on a regular basis.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and one thing it sounds like is you weren't too hard on yourself when you changed navigation and you were like, you know what, this isn't really actually working for me and I'm going to go back to certain things that seem like a better fit. So I'm proud of you for that.
It was intuitive. It's like, nope, this was always the way to go. Like UMC was the way to go. Like UMC had that identity. And again, you know, the conversations I had, they're like, you know, you have something really strong and it needs to be dialed in on that. And I'm like, you're right.
Yeah.
And I try to take too wide of an approach, you know, over the summer and fall. And ultimately there was nothing wrong with UMC. And I think other stressors were clouding my vision of that. But ultimately, like there's been so much good and so much working about UMC for a long time. And it's like, well, I abandoned a lot of that by pivoting. And well, it's not too late.
No.
Go back.
Yeah.
You know, go back and be like, hey guys, sorry about that. We're here now. you know?
And I think people get so scared about trying a new thing, but it's like, okay, if you try a new thing and it doesn't seem to work, then just re-navigate. Go back to the thing that worked better for you. That's totally fine, and it happens.
We've got Lord Goldie peeking in outside the studio.
Good to see you. I haven't seen you forever.
Yeah.
I know. I need to come hang out more.
Yeah.
We're podcasting.
Yeah. She just tied you, by the way. Three appearances.
Well, and I shouted out to you at the beginning. I was like, Lord Goldie's the best. Yeah. Aw. Tears.
This will be good bonus content.
Yes, bonus content. We love bonus content.
Yeah. We will.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
That's so funny. But I think one thing that you said that stands out to me too is community and connection. And at least for me, that's something personally that I've kind of been lacking, is like deep connection.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be really cool that you're leading in that, in the music industry, in the podcast industry, etc. And then I'm going to do that in the therapy and just like human part of life. So I'm really excited to do these little therapy yoga retreats. I've been praying on it and thinking about it. I'm not sure where they'll be yet. I do think like 4 to 5 days, no cell phones. I feel like after this, it really told me that that's going to be part of the way to go, is like no phones.
Throw it in the river.
Yeah, we do need more time. I understand why we need them, but we do need more time without it. I think it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like one thing that's really coming up for me recently, especially after being in Denver at the conference and like receiving a lot of mentorship after that, is like, you have to know exactly what you want out of life and feel okay about wanting it. You know, because like, again, you know, being, you know, service minded, it does feel selfish sometimes to like want things and to want to prosper and to want to build, you know, your own life to the moon, you know, and have a grand vision for that as well. But ultimately, that grand vision for your life is going to feed your vision and whatever else you're creating in the world.
Yes.
Right. And the level that reaches is going to dictate the level that all these other things reach. Right. Like I think I've gotten okay with saying like, yeah, like I want to be successful. I want to have generational wealth. I want all of these things because of what that is going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
What that's going to allow me to do through this platform, what it's going to allow me to do for the people I love. Like it's got to be a bigger game than just you. And I think that's an important thing for us to keep in mind, but it's okay to want those things.
Yeah.
And like, it's like having that vision is ultimately what's going to light your dark hours, right? It's what's going to be what propels you forward. Because if you don't have that and you don't know where you're headed, something else is going to lead you. And chances are it's going to lead you away from what you truly want.
100%. I think it's so important to have a vision. Did you do like a manifestation board or like a paper for this year or anything?
I've been journaling a lot. I've also been reading, you know, and like, again, like breaking down like the stories that I have about like money and that kind of thing. And, you know, it's been really helpful, you know, and just also in conversations and consultations, just realizing like, all of it's interconnected. You know, what I want for life, what I want for my personal life is interconnected to the business and interconnected to the platform because it's all part of this grander story. And the rippling effects of that, you know, have a chance to have an even greater impact after me, you know, after I'm gone, you know, like to be able to get to a point where, say, I'm the first millionaire in my family, to be able to get to the point where, you know, the platform is everything I could want it to be, where we have our own physical facility, Mom's Basement Studios inside of it, to where we're, you know, putting on events all over the country. We have this community all over the country and world. Like, to do that, you need the resources. And to do that, you have to get in line with feeling okay acquiring them. And of course, always acquire them, you know, by, you know, means of integrity, you know, but it's like there's nothing wrong with wanting to be successful because that's going to allow you to build. It's going to allow you to build the vision. It's going to allow you to build your legacy, and it's going to allow you to show those who come after you, give them a blueprint for what they can create for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. If they'd like, because again, it's their own journey, but there will definitely be people that want to take a similar journey. I'm sure. Did you have a word that came up for you this year? I had one, so that's why I was bringing it up, but
a word that came up. Give me a minute, and maybe one will. But what's yours?
So mine was, well, I did two. I did expansion and authenticity. And so for expansion, initially I was really thinking like expansion of the podcast, expansion of Soul Fit and stuff like that. But I've been praying on it, and I really just feel like I've had a lot of expansion internally with who I am. And it's so crazy because you can do all of this therapy and all of that, and you're like, oh, I've got a really good solid grasp on who I am. And I do have that, and I have had that. But an even deeper one, just because this year it was such a year of grieving with my grandma passing and then my other grandma being really sick and really hurt and caretaking her. And then, there's just been some other things, big season of grieving. And so the expansion, I would say, I feel like God, at least for me, you can write these things down and it's not necessarily going to end up the way that you thought it was.
Right.
So he may take you a different road. Another thing that I wrote on my list, and then we'll come to your word, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
You're like, we'll see. Is that I wanted to go to where my grandfather was born in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And I just was going to see his mom and dad's gravesites. I didn't plan on like doing anything else there. And then I found out about this therapy retreat for professionals. Like it's only for therapists, for psychologists, psychiatrists, etc. And so it's just wild how God and the world works and how things can kind of re-navigate and not be the way you thought it was going to look, but then just embracing whatever it is and leaning into that.
Yeah. I think I have my word.
What is your word?
Intentionality.
Oh, yes.
Intentionality. Like, what purpose does each action you take serve in the big picture? You know, because there have definitely been actions I've taken this year that, you know, while important pieces, you know, weren't supported by the other actions I was taking or the foundation that had been laid before. And so the puzzle was incomplete. But then it's also, you know, for me, it was this matter of like, you know, being intentional about like really getting re-intentional, I guess, if that's a word, about exactly where I want to land and what I want this all to be. Because there was definitely a point over the summer as I was like going through, you know, into this pivot, you know, which we re-pivoted from now, of wondering if I wanted to pivot at all, or wondering if I just wanted to, if this was the time where I finally became normal, you know?
Yeah.
And went back
to
the cubicle and, you know, like, hey, had a good run, this, that, and the other thing. Like, I definitely got to that point where I'm like, you know, where I was missing home and I felt like I was missing out on other aspects of life. And I spent most of the summer up north in Jersey and Pennsylvania, where I'm from, feeling that out, honestly. And like feeling out like, you know, do I want to come back here? And do I want to, like, in a permanent way? And do I want to just get a job and start checking boxes? And, you know, while it's important to me to show up for the people I care about, and it's important to me, you know, especially family, you know, my nieces and nephew, you know, as you know, are very close to me. You know, there's also this part of me that's like, I would go crazy. And it's not because of them. It's because like, if I were to just go back to like this autopilot of like, okay, I get a paycheck every 2 weeks and, you know, okay, I just find ways to fill my time otherwise. Like, that's not living to me. And it would feel very hollow. It would feel very empty. And it has felt hollow and empty for me before, you know, and you start trying to fill, you know, as humans, we start trying to fill those voids with other things. And I don't want to be in that position.
No, it's like, it's not feeding your soul. And I think another good question that we can ask ourselves when we're going to make a decision, whether it be little or big, is, am I doing this out of a place of fear, or am I doing this out of a place of like peace and calm? And so that will help us know. And I think sometimes we do things out of fear, and that's okay. We're fucking human. But then come back to like, oh, I messed up. Let me like make amends, apologize, etc. And then let's go reroute, and that's okay. It seemed like something came up for you there.
Yeah, there was a lot of fear-based action, and like even that entire thought process of, am I giving up the ghost finally? You know, like, is that a fear-based reaction itself? Because like I had seen and I got a taste of what lies out there if I keep going, but I think that I had a lot of fear of failure, but also some fear of success. You know, and fear of having to change and be a different, you know, more evolved version of myself in order to get there. And so, you know, most of the time I spent up north, as a matter of fact, all of it, like I was pretty sure I was leaving Nashville. I did not want to come back here.
I did not realize this.
Like, I had no desire to come back to Nashville. And then, then I'm like, well, I got to go back there because time's up and I got to get back down. We've got the, you know, birthday show on Friday. First couple days back in Nashville, I was miserable. And then we had the birthday show at Cobra for the show.
How was that?
And it completely turned things around. And I realized what I do have here. And how I have an amazing community here. And like, there's a lot to build on here. And I also realized in the process of that a lot of my fear and a lot of my disdain for being here in Nashville over the past 18 months at that point in time in September was related to things that had happened here. External things.
And I think that that's okay, but it's not, that was never about you, your soul, Gerard. And so I think that outside stuff always it can affect us, and it does, but then coming back to you, because like you said, when you got back and you did the Cobra thing, you were like, I feel good here.
Yeah. And, you know, a precursor to that was the night before. I was driving around and, you know, like the thing is, like, full disclosure, without naming anything, it was a relational thing that had happened in 2022 that we've alluded to on the show before, especially on our episodes.
Therapy stuff.
And the thing is, like, that had all happened and it was bad last year. Like, it was effed up. And then I go up north, you know, for Music Fest and the Caper, you know, which I've talked about on the show before. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch an episode. You'll surely hear about it. And I'm there for 5 weeks and I'm like, this is wonderful. This is great. Like, like, this is wonderful. This is great. This is where I need to be. And then I come back to Nashville 2022 in September. And I'm like, I don't really want to be here, but I'm here to finish what I started, whatever. And then I just hold up in a work cocoon until it almost like got the better of me in July, you know, like, and I just felt like I needed to pump the brakes. But like, there was no chance to really give myself new social experiences because I was in this work cocoon, go, make as much money as possible to pay for all these things, to invest in the business, go. It was really unhealthy. And I get back here in September after 2 months up north, and after a couple days of really not wanting to be here, I'm driving around, I'm like, my problem's not with Nashville. My problem is I haven't given myself new experiences after that. That was the last serious attempt to that point that I had at having a social life in this city. And then after all that goes and hits the fan, I go up north where I have a thriving social life anytime I want. And I'm like, well, this is way better than that. And then I'm here just slugging it out, afraid to step out and have a social life because of what had happened last time.
I'm so proud of you that you are now, though, that you are stepping out and you are just like standing in your power and asserting. And I think no matter what, sometimes we have like a little bit of grieving with things that happen, whether it be friends that we lose or just anything that happens like that. So it's like allowing yourself, and this is something I learned this last week, is allowing yourself to be angry first. And I think that I don't know much about your grieving with your mom, but probably there was probably quite a bit of anger, different things, and then maybe eventually coming to a place of peace. And but always, it's like always, grief is always going to be there kind of in a way.
You know, with my mom, it was kind of a delayed onset because it was so sudden. And, you know, it was obviously in the moment awful and devastating and all the things you'd expect it to be when she passed. But after that, it's like, you know, the day after the funeral, I was just like, I texted my boss. I'm like, coming back to work tomorrow. She's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I don't want to sit here anymore. Like, let's go. And she's like, you don't have to until next week. I'm like, I'm coming. Please, I'm coming.
And sometimes that's important to just keep doing that way because it's too much pain too quickly.
But you know when it hit me, because she passed in September of 2015, Christmas. I remember specifically, my one memory of Christmas 2015 was on Christmas Eve, sitting in the basement with my girlfriend at the time, looking at all these presents, not wanting to wrap a single one of them. And that's when it hit me. You know, I'm like, this sucks. I hate this. Like,
I don't want to be here without her.
You know, and it was a delayed onset. And then, you know, I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm back living my life. I'll launch Lehigh Valley Underground. That becomes my great distraction through 2016, 2017, until me and that girlfriend break up. And then that was the whole thing, you know, but that's the thing is like, there's a pattern here of me always just holing up in work when things go wrong.
So that's what I'm hearing you say that you did maybe over the past year and a half is you kind of went head down, grinding for work, that kind of thing. And you distance yourself from fun and friendship and connection, and that now you're back in a place of, you know what, I want to lean back into that connection and community and stuff like that.
But I think be more intentional about it too, you know, because like, I'll tell you the truth, like in Denver, you know, I'm at a business conference, but I had a lot of fun talking to people and having these higher level conversations, which like you don't necessarily always get, you know, in your normal environment, you know, and I'm just thinking like, I'm going to be 37 in March, right? And like, I'm kind of, even though, you know, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I just sat here and crushed a flight of beer, you know, filming another podcast. Like, I'm not the type to go out and really party. Like, I really have no interest in it. And I have friends who like when I'm around them will still try to pull me that way. And I'm like, honestly, I just don't want to do it anymore. And it's like, and it's almost like this dynamic of you're stepping back into college and people are going to ridicule you if you don't want to get wasted with them. And it's like, I'm only 37 years old. Like, I don't want that. Like, I want to get to the point where, you know, I'm really building the thing I want to build so I can welcome more in. So I can welcome a partner, so I can welcome a family, because that is a goal of mine, is to have that. And it's like, you know, there are just certain behaviors that you realize, you know, over time, whether you see them in yourself or you see them in other people, that just don't fit that equation. And so like, I want to have fun. I want to be social, but I want to do that intentionally. And I want to, as elitist as this might sound, I want to do that with people who are on my maturity level, you know?
Completely agree. And that is something that I want to pray about, manifest, etc. is bringing more people into my circle that can speak the same language that I speak. Because I really got to experience that this last week with other therapists that are very emotionally mature most of the time. We're all human again, but it's just so beautiful to have that kind of connection. So I agree, having more of those people that's not just party, it's not just that kind of thing. So is that one of, I would say, let's go there next, like highlights of the year. So is Denver one of your highlights of the year?
Absolutely. It completely reframed, you know, the way I'm approaching building this thing. You know, love that. Because it gave me the missing pieces that I've been beating my head against the wall trying to figure out, as far as like what I need to do. And what I need to do is really lean into, you know, the proven tactics that work to scaling a thing, right? So it's that, and just being in that room and being you know, among that energy of people who are where I want to be. You know, who are in a position to serve the way I want to serve. You know, like, and that's the thing, like, and I'm not knocking my experience around here in Nashville. Like I've definitely come to a much better place with Nashville, to the point where like I'm leaving for the holidays and I kind of don't want to. I kind of want to keep going right now. Like I've completely done a 180 on my attitude about being in Nashville over the past couple months. But it's like, the thing with the music industry is like, the music business doesn't teach you business. And I needed to step out of the industry circles that I'm in to go learn that world, so I can bring that back. And like, now I feel like supercharged with it, you know? So on the business end, like that was definitely the highlight, I would say, you know, and there have been some highlights, there have been some milestones, but I feel like that's the one with the most reverberating effects as far as what it can, what it's, you reframe my mind to be able to do.
I love that.
You know, personally speaking, I mean, I haven't really had much of a personal life this year. But I will say, like, you know, going back north and like, you know, being able to step back into my environment back home and see people. I mean, Music Fest is like summer camp every year, you know, and life permitting, you know, it's something I'd like to do every year and treat as my summer vacation. You know, like, you know, the experiences that I had this year up north, you know, I don't think they were as poignant as 2022, because I needed them in 2022, like in a personal sense. I really did. But it was still good to just like know that that's there for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
What about you?
Some highlights of the year. So, you know how much I love traveling. So I did get to go with Kat, my friend, and Haley to Spain and France, and we loved it. We had so much fun. My nails bent backwards. That was a crazy thing that happened. Did I show you that at yoga?
No.
They're fine now, but 2 of my fingernails, we were in the ocean in Spain, and they just like backwards, and that is some crazy kind of pain.
How did that?
I had gel on them, like a gel polish, and for some reason, I don't know, they just like unlatched to my finger. It was intense pain.
So like they had like a reaction to the ocean water? Like,
I'm not sure. I think they had already kind of been a little bit like not as stable, and then all of a sudden the ocean water, just those 2 girls were like goodbye. So that was kind of crazy, but overall we had a freaking blast. Love you, Kitty. She's so good at planning and all of that. I love traveling with her. We did Ireland together last year, and we'll hopefully do something this next year. And then I did Colorado. I went skiing for the first time, so that was super fun. You know about that.
I do.
So those are just some personal things. Then business wise, I do think I want to get more centered, maybe less individual therapy and more of a goal to do once every 2 months, do this group thing that I'm planning. And so again, I'm gonna look at places, and I've already talked to a male therapist that really wants to team up together, and he also teaches yoga, so that's exciting.
There you go.
Yeah, so we'll be having it's like a fun balance of yoga, meditation, deep work, all of that. So
already having a glimpse into 2024.
yeah, I definitely have a glimpse into it, and I am excited.
Well, I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
And thank you as always for coming on the show.
I'm so glad to be here.
Next time you'll tie the record. As long as Aaron doesn't jump in for number 5.
Yes, we'll see. If so, that's okay.
Yeah.
I understand.
You mean you don't want to just take the lead?
Yeah. I don't know what we could do it on. I feel like we could have like a pretend therapy session or something.
I mean, to be fair, we didn't plan for this at all.
No, not
I was just
at
like,
all.
hey, you want to do another interview? Sure.
Sure, let's do it.
And then yesterday, I knew you were coming out of your cave in Kentucky, and I'm like, hey, still good for tomorrow? Yeah.
Yep.
Then you showed up, and it's like, hey, just switching podcasts here. So you ready? Okay, cool.
Yep.
And look, we did.
I love that. I know. I think that's just one thing that I do admire about you is that you do just show up as fully yourself every time. I never really feel like you have a mask on or anything like that. I just feel like you're fully Gerard, whether you're being like your fun self, your really extroverted self, maybe your stressed out self. Like you allow yourself to be fully you, and I admire that about you.
Stressed out self has never shown up to yoga.
Oh,
never.
Well, maybe he's shown up to yoga, but he didn't leave yoga.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what are you talking about? You've never seen me
never seen that. No, never seen you stressed.
Never at all.
Not a part of you at all.
No. Where can they find you online?
They can find me on Instagram, Lauren Gomance, Soulfit Counseling, Soulfit Yoga. And my website is getyoursoulfit.com. And hopefully I'll have some more additions to the website soon. And that is it.
And this has been the Quinn Spinn, 2 N's and Quinn, 2 N's and Spin. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, and more. Also on Instagram at Quinn Spinn Official. Again, 2 N's and Quinn, 2 N's and Spin. You can also look us up on Facebook as well. We're not really active on X as it's known now. Mostly because it's called X. But anyway, Underground Music Collective, our central hub for all things independent music, creativity, community, self-betterment, and more. Instagram, Facebook, we're on X, yeah. LinkedIn, YouTube. Also, follow the UMC 20 playlist on Spotify. Back and better than ever, baby. Updated every single Tuesday. And umusiccollective.com. Letter U, Music Collective is our domain. Because I'm trying to get the old one back, but that'll do for now. See what happens when you pivot and then pivot again? You have to clean up your mess. Anyway, Revel 9's all I've become. I'm going to take us out just like it brought us in. And grab some muffins on your way out. I almost forgot the outro, so we're going to leave now. Bye.